The Haunting of the Mary Celeste. Welcome back to Dark Bedtime Tales, where shadows blur the line between reality and nightmare. Tonight we delve into one of the greatest maritime mysteries of all time, the story of the Mary Celeste. A ship found adrift in the middle of the Atlantic, her crew vanished without a trace. The question that has haunted sailors, investigators, and historians alike is simple. What happened to them? Was it a mutiny? Murder, or did something far more sinister drive the crew to their doom? Settle in as we explore the eerie tale of the Mary Celeste, where the unknown beckons from the dark waters below.
Dark Bedtime Tales.
The Ghost Ship. Captain David Morehouse stood on the deck of the Dei Gratia, his gaze locked on the shape of a ship drifting aimlessly in the distance. He recognized it instantly, a chill creeping up his spine. The Mary Celeste. He had crossed paths with her captain, Benjamin Briggs, only a few weeks earlier when they both prepared to set sail from New York. But here she was, miles off course and seemingly abandoned. Morehouse raised his spyglass and scanned the ship again. Her sails were torn, the rigging a tangled mess, and not a soul was visible on deck. Something was very, very wrong. "Captain," called his first mate, Oliver Cartwright. "Shall we investigate?" Morehouse hesitated, his fingers tightening around the spyglass. Every instinct told him to turn away, to let the Mary Celeste drift into oblivion. But duty called. Nodding grimly, he ordered the crew to prepare to board the derelict vessel. As they drew alongside the ship, an eerie silence fell over the sea. The water, usually in constant motion, seemed unnaturally calm, too calm. The crew of the Dei Gratia exchanged uneasy glances, but none dared to speak their thoughts aloud. The Mary Celeste had an unnatural aura, as if the very air around her was thick with the weight of something long buried. Morehouse, Cartwright, and two other men climbed aboard. The smell of brine and rot hung heavy in the air, mixed with something else, something metallic, like the faint scent of blood. The ship creaked and groaned beneath their feet as they moved cautiously across the deck, noting the torn sails and damaged rigging. Inside the captain's cabin, Morehouse found personal effects left untouched. Captain Briggs' journal, his wife Sarah's belongings, and even a small doll that likely belonged to their daughter Sophia. Everything was in its place. Everything, that is, except the people. In the first mate's quarters, they discovered the ship's logbook. The last entry was dated November 25, 1872, 10 days ago. The Mary Celeste had been near the Azores then, with calm seas and no sign of trouble. But the words in the logbook trailed off as if Captain Briggs had been interrupted. The final entry read, "Something strange in the water. We are not alone." Theories of disappearance. For days after the discovery, the crew of the Dei Gratia debated what might have happened to the Mary Celeste. With no clear evidence of foul play and the ship's cargo of denatured alcohol untouched, the mystery seemed impenetrable. But theories began to form, each one more disturbing than the last. The theory of mutiny. Oliver Cartwright was the first to suggest it, speaking in hushed tones around the lantern-lit table in the Dei Gratia's galley. "Maybe there was a mutiny," he said. "The crew overpowered Briggs, killed him, and fled in the lifeboat." The other men nodded slowly, but Morehouse shook his head. "It doesn't add up. Briggs was no fool. He handpicked his crew, each of them experienced and trustworthy. They had no reason to mutiny." But Cartwright wasn't easily swayed. What if something went wrong? Perhaps the alcohol fumes caused an argument. You know how volatile those barrels can be. Maybe they feared an explosion and it all spiraled out of control. It was a plausible theory, one grounded in reality. The cargo hold held nearly 1,700 barrels of denatured alcohol, highly flammable and potentially dangerous if fumes built up. If the crew feared the ship would explode, they might have opened the hatches to release the fumes. But mutiny? It seemed unlikely. Morehouse remained unconvinced. If they killed Briggs, why leave the ship? Why not take it for themselves? There's no sign of violence here. No blood, no bodies. Cartwright's face darkened, his voice dropping to a whisper. Not all violence leaves blood, Captain. Maybe they took the lifeboat, thinking the ship would blow, and they left Briggs behind to die alone. The idea hung in the air like a storm cloud, but something in Morehouse's gut told him it wasn't that simple. The theory of insurance fraud. The next theory was more insidious, whispered among the sailors as they lay in their bunks at night. What if the disappearance had been staged? What if Captain Briggs and Morehouse had conspired to fake the abandonment of the Mary Celeste to claim the ship's insurance? After all, Briggs was part owner of the vessel. In difficult financial times, such a scheme could make sense. The crew might have been in on it, or perhaps they had been disposed of quietly after abandoning ship. Morehouse scoffed at the idea, but doubts lingered. You think I'd risk my ship, my crew, and my own reputation on such a scheme? He asked Cartwright one evening, pacing the deck. No, if there was any foul play, it didn't come from me. But the theory held a dark allure. If Briggs had wanted to disappear, to leave his old life behind, the open sea was the perfect place to do it. Perhaps he had led his family and crew to a nearby island, intending to vanish forever, while Morehouse claimed the Mary Celeste as salvage. It was a thought that gnawed at Morehouse's mind, especially when they found an odd discrepancy in the navigation charts. According to the last log entry, Briggs believed he was 120 miles further east than he truly was. Could that mistake have been intentional, or was it the first sign of something going terribly wrong? The island refuge theory. A few days later, as the Dei Gradius sailed toward Gibraltar, Cartwright voiced another possibility that had been weighing on the crew's minds. What if they made it to land, sir? What if they took the lifeboat to one of the Azores Islands? We know they were close to Santa Maria. Morehouse considered this. If Briggs had believed the ship was in danger, whether from fumes, sinking, or something else, it would make sense to seek refuge on land. The Azores were only a day's sail from their last recorded position. It wasn't beyond reason to think they had fled the Mary Celeste for the safety of an island. But if that was the case, why hadn't they returned? Why abandon the ship altogether? Cartwright offered an unsettling suggestion. Maybe they thought the anchor would hold the Mary Celeste while they went ashore. What if it didn't? What if the ship drifted away, leaving them stranded? The thought chilled Morehouse to the bone. An island might have seemed like salvation, but it could just as easily become a prison. With no way to return to the ship, the crew and Briggs' family could have perished, marooned on a desolate rock, while the Mary Celeste floated away, lost to the sea. The supernatural explanation. There was another theory, though no one spoke of it aloud at first. It was a theory whispered in the darkest hours of the night when the crew huddled together below deck, voices hushed in fear. They had all heard the stories, tales of ghostly ships, demonic entities, and malevolent forces that stalked the high seas. What if, one of the sailors whispered one night, it wasn't natural? What if they were running from something else? Morehouse had no patience for superstition, but even he couldn't deny that the Mary Celeste carried an oppressive, otherworldly atmosphere. The smell of salt and iron, the inexplicable tapping noises below deck. There was a sense of something watching them, something that had followed them ever since they boarded the abandoned ship. There were legends, old sea tales of phantom ships crewed by the damned, doomed to sail the oceans for eternity. Others spoke of ships cursed by demons or haunted by the souls of those who had died violent, tragic deaths at sea. Cartwright, normally so rational, found himself entertaining the idea one night. What if Captain Briggs saw something, something none of us can imagine? What if he took his family and crew and fled because they were being hunted? The words hung in the air like the stench of rotting seaweed. There was no evidence, of course, no bodies, no signs of struggle. But the fear was real, and fear, on the open ocean, could drive a man to madness. The waterspout and explosion theory. Still, there were those aboard the Dei Gratia who clung to more practical explanations. One such theory, discussed in the light of day when the shadows seemed less oppressive, was that the Mary Celeste had encountered a waterspout, a sudden, violent tornado at sea. The force of the spout could have torn the sails and damaged the rigging, while the sudden atmospheric drop could have caused water to flood the ship's hold. Briggs, fearing the vessel would sink, might have ordered everyone into the lifeboat, tethering it to the Mary Celeste as they waited out the storm. But water spouts were unpredictable, and all it would take was a single miscalculation. A snapped towline, a surge of wind, and the lifeboat could have been cut loose, leaving the crew and passengers at the mercy of the ocean. As the Mary Celeste drifted, her occupants could have perished, lost forever in the vast Atlantic. Another plausible theory was that the alcohol in the hold had caused a small explosion, a pressure wave so intense that it scared the crew into abandoning ship. Dr. Andrea Sella's 2006 experiment demonstrated how an alcohol-fueled explosion could have caused a dramatic pressure surge without leaving scorch marks. The fear of a larger explosion might have driven Briggs and his crew into the lifeboat, only for them to be separated from the ship by a gust of wind or a snapped line. A curse on the sea. As the Dei Gratia approached Gibraltar, Morehouse couldn't shake the feeling that the Mary Celeste's mystery would never be solved. No matter how many theories they considered, mutiny, insurance fraud, a failed escape to an island, or something more supernatural, the truth remained elusive. The trial in Gibraltar left more questions than answers. The courts, suspicious of foul play, awarded Morehouse and his crew a meager salvage reward, and rumors circulated that he had something to do with the disappearance of the Mary Celeste's crew. But Morehouse knew better. He had seen the ship, had felt the cold dread that clung to it. Whatever had happened aboard the Mary Celeste, it was not of this world. The Mary Celeste herself would not meet a peaceful end. Years later, after a series of misfortunes and failed voyages, her final captain, Parker, ran her aground in a deliberate act of insurance fraud. The ship was wrecked near Haiti, her remains left to rot in the shallows. But even in death, the Mary Celeste's curse lingered. Parker died in disgrace, his reputation ruined. His co-conspirators faced madness and death. Some say the Mary Celeste still sails the seas, a ghost ship forever adrift, her crew lost to the mysteries of the deep. Perhaps they found something on those dark waters, something that should never have been uncovered. Or perhaps they were simply unlucky, victims of the sea's cruel caprice. Whatever the truth, one thing is certain: the Mary Celeste will never rest, and neither will we, as long as her story remains untold. Thank you for joining me on Dark Bedtime Tales. Sleep well, but remember, some mysteries are better left unsolved.